Okay, what crazy stuff's happening today? I guess there was no avoiding this, even here in Canada. Apparently last night, the US president said he has COVID. He basically posted on his tweet here, says, "Tonight, the First Lady of the US and I tested positive for COVID-19. We will begin our quarantine and recovery process immediately. We will get through this together." This will be really interesting because depending on what happens, it could sway a lot of different opinions or directions on how that country would go about with things like this. Although what I thought would be interesting is to show people what it's like here on how they report it in the mainstream in Canada, because technically with the COVID stuff, they're saying it's usually the elderly or the vulnerable that will be the most susceptible, for example, to death. So they're evaluating how likely is Trump going to survive this. So you can see here like the CBC one, it says Trump's medical history. And it says he's technically obese, cholesterol a concern, doesn't exercise regularly, beyond golf. So they're saying he has a high risk, I guess, of potentially having some kind of fatal or extreme compromising condition afterwards, I suppose. I've never seen someone write that before, technically obese. They do say, I guess, one positive advantage is he doesn't smoke or drink apparently, so who knows what will happen afterwards. Then with news later today, like here, it says, President Trump experiencing low-grade fever and fatigue after testing positive for COVID-19. And to my understanding, they brought him to a military hospital, so who knows what will happen afterwards. It's just kind of interesting just to see the reactions everywhere. But for myself, it'll be interesting to see how they use this as a way to dictate what happens later on, because I could easily see it going both ways. If he fully recovers and he's perfectly fine, then he could say, for example, nothing's wrong. It's just like any other, I guess, viruses out in the world, so let's get back to business, so to speak. Or if he ends up being harmed in an extreme way, then people can say, here's the reason why you need to lock everything down. So I can see it going either way depending on what happens. And the other thing I read today, I think it was really interesting, because when it comes to things like drone regulations, a lot of people would say they're really over the top, they don't make sense, and they're designed by people who have no clue. So how about in this case where an actual, I suppose you could say, lawmaker has actual first-hand experience in a way that affects them, and because of that, they make the drone regulations more lax and open to most people to use it. This one says, Tacoma's resolution supports responsible recreational drone use. Following community concerns in Tacoma regarding possibly unsafe drone operations, as well as confusion about federal laws and regulations surrounding recreational drone use, the City Council has passed Resolution 40658, supporting responsible recreational drone use in Tacoma. The resolution directs the city manager to establish a point of reference on the city's website connecting Tacoma's community members to federally established laws and regulations, as well as recommendations and best practices. Technological advancement provides us with many wonderful new devices and toys, including drones, which can be great fun, said at-large council member Lillian Hunter. Without adequate knowledge of pertinent federal laws and regulations surrounding recreational drone use, however, drones can also be a great nuisance. It is important for recreational drone operators to have fun responsibly, safely, and consideration of the impacts of neighbors and the greater community. Surprisingly few people are aware of the Federal Aviation Administration is the government body that regulates all aspects of civil aviation in our country, and they have specific rules and regulations for recreational drone operation. I know I was. This resolution is intended to help drone operators fully understand the FAA's expectations and their role in responsibly meeting those expectations. And here's the really interesting part here, where when someone has first-hand experience, then they have kind of a different attitude. It says here, this past summer, my son got his first drone for his birthday, said District 1 Council member John Hines. After flying it around our yard for a few days, he grew bored and wanted to take it to one of our local parks. At the time, I was not sure about whether drones were allowed in parks and what rules might be. I began to look into the requirement and found that the information was hard to find, and there were requirements I did not know about. I wanted to move forward with this resolution to make it easier for community members to locate the FAA's latest guidance on recreational drone use. As drones grow in popularity and more people, like my son, want to get out into the parks and open spaces, it is critical that they have easy access to accurate information about what is expected. What a great example, in my opinion, where again, this directly affects the person. They have first-hand experience. My child just wants to fly this in an open space, then why not? Federal laws aside on how some of them don't make sense and treating it like a huge airplane, This is how it should be for the most part. If people are using it in an open space in a community in a perfectly fine and safe way, they should be able to do it. At the same time, if you're someone flying stuff like this drone, then use basic common sense as you would with anything else. Don't fly it in circles around certain people, for example. Don't do it in a dangerous way. Just be safe. Isn't that how it should be? This reminds me of the point that many people brought up early on, where if you are a regulator trying to make some kind of law, then you need X amount of hours of real experience. You think this law makes sense? You get out there as a regular average individual and see if it makes sense, because it'll probably completely change your tune afterwards. Alright, see you guys later.